Morning, everyone. So, water companies on the agenda today. I was discussing that with my channel. Now, it's actually, I'll tell you, it's quite interesting. Graham just put something in that is also worth talking about. So, two things. First of all, the show tomorrow morning will be at 9 a.m. Reason for that is Graham is having someone smash his teeth in, and I couldn't do it because I'm having my electricity turned off tomorrow. But the other thing is, so on the thumbnail, Graham added in an image of Fergal Sharkey, who to of us at a certain age is a singer, but to people these days, he's a campaigner, an environmental campaigner with a particular focus on water pollution caused by our errant water companies. And there is, some people may know, there is a march for this, March for Clean Water, it's called. And it was going to be this weekend in London, but it's actually now November the 3rd. Worth pointing out, because what was really interesting, when they first announced this march, which is calling, of course, for action on water pollution, the government responded. Where is it now? I've lost it. Oh, here it is. Yeah, response to coverage on March for Clean Water. Now, the government don't always have to do this, but of course, we've got a new government, a government that is given every impression of wanting to clean up water pollution. So they actually put a bit of a response in there in terms of talking about what they've been doing. And in terms of what they're doing now, so the government they've launched what they call a sort of 3-stage process for dealing with water companies. The first one, and they've got this on their website now. The first one was, so Steve Reed is the name to remember. He is now effectively the Environment Secretary. He's DEFRA, Secretary of State for DEFRA, which includes the environment. And it's the first thing they did is he came in, he got water company executives around the table, and he says, look, you're asking, because what's happening, right, is we were told when Thatcher privatised it, oh, they'll bring in all this investment and they'll modernise our infrastructure. And it's like 40 years later, what's happening? Is it 40? Is it 30? Can't remember. Some excessive period of time later, they are, they're dumping all this sewage. We go, why are you dumping all this sewage? What's going on? He says, oh, well, it's not our fault. It's this crumbling Victorian infrastructure. It's like, we were promised with pride. We didn't really believe it at the time. Well, I didn't. But we were promised that you would modernise this infrastructure. What's happened? And they go, oh, yeah, right. Well, we've done some things. What have you done? What have you done? We spent a load of money. So now what they're saying is, all right, okay, we agree that we need to update the infrastructure, right? We get that. But we need money for it. And you can't just say, well, use the money you've been, gathering to yourself, all this, because that just goes to shareholders, right? That's already gone, it's spent. So they need to put up bills in order to pay for it. Now, the government also realised this as well, that we're not going to get that infrastructure without money, and that money is going to ultimately have to come from customers. So they're saying, right, at the very least, if you say you need this money for infrastructure, we don't want you spending it on bonuses, because you know what happens, right? You get a load of money and you get, okay, you have a business plan. Okay, we need to build this infrastructure. This is what it will cost. So we need to put bills up by this amount. And then when it comes time to build that infrastructure, they go, well, is there a cheaper way of doing it? Let's cut some corners, do it cheaper. And then we can get the extra money we can use for bonuses and shareholder payouts. So Steve Reed said, yeah, you're not doing that. You're going to ring fence the money so that the money is spent on infrastructure and anything that's left over goes back to customers. So that was the first thing they did. Second thing they did is the special measures bill. There's a water bill going through Parliament. It's only just started. I don't know how quickly it will go through. I'm hoping it goes through quite quickly. I don't know what the timetable is, because it does a lot of things, but it puts a duty on water company executives to April of each year to basically produce a plan on what they're going to do. So obviously this legislation needs to be in place, you would think, by about end of February in order to force water companies to be able to do this. But there we go. Well, Jamie's just saying that nationalise all utilities. Yes, so I would be in favour of that. But there is potentially another thing they may be doing which could actually solve the problem for most people. Now, it depends on why you are in favour of nationalisation. What I'd like people to do in the chat, there's a bit of a delay, but I'm going to talk about one more thing first as well. Put down your reasons why you think nationalised utilities are better than privatised utilities. A little bit of minor homework for you, which you have to do now. The other thing that the new legislation does when it's passed is it will make, in fact, I'll give you the highlights that the government themselves are pointing out. So bring criminal charges against persistent lawbreakers, including imprisonment. I have read through the bill myself. And yes, it does. So it includes, I mean, to begin with, fines. Obviously, don't just send someone straight to prison, but it includes fines. But if they keep breaking the law, then yes, there are prison sentences going to be making their way. And I don't think it'll ever get to that point because you know what? They're not stupid people. They will adapt to the new landscape. As soon as they are made personally responsible, they will start behaving more responsibly. It says strengthen regulation to ensure water bosses face personal criminal liability for law breaking. That's part of the same thing. But that's the bit for the fines. Giving the water regulators, that's Ofwat, new powers to ban the payment of bonuses if environmental standards are not met. So, you know, remember, water companies, they come up with a bonus structure for their executives. The reason why executives are doing what they're doing, it's not because it's hard to treat the water. It is expensive to treat the water, but it's not difficult, right? Or actually, it is now more difficult to get hold of chemicals. But the other thing is, their bonuses are structured in such a way that they're told to prioritize profits, right? So if you can say to them, okay, yeah, you've got these the bonuses linked to profits, fine, whatever, but you will not get any bonus if you keep breaking the law or if you don't maintain certain environmental standards. If the regulator can say to an executive, I don't care what your bonuses are linked to, if you do not protect the environment, you're not getting them. So that is useful. Boosts accountability for water executives through a new code of conduct for water companies, so customers can summon board members and hold executives to account. I don't know how effective that will be, but that's a nice thought. Introduce new powers to bring automatic and severe fines. So this is the idea. If you there's no process of, oh, should we fine them or not? Nothing like that. If you dump raw sewage and it does, outside of the conditions for doing so, you'll just automatically be fined. Automatic. Require water companies to install real-time monitors at every sewage outlet with data independently scrutinised by water regulators. So the problem we have at the moment is this goes back to David Cameron. Liz Truss was the Environment Secretary at the time. God. So it was actually the only competent thing she did, except it wasn't in our interest. So she banned, she didn't ban actually, she made it unnecessary to have water monitoring. You would think there should be monitoring by every outlet, right? No, they got rid of them. So there are actually very few now, which means whenever you see a report about how much sewage was dumped last year, it's an estimate because we don't really know because it's not being monitored. And when it is monitored, it's the water companies who monitor it and they produce a report, which they then publish. Well, we don't want them. That's marking their own homework. We don't want them producing the report. So this would say you have to have monitoring at every outlet or you will be fined, right? And the data goes to Ofwat, doesn't go to the water. I mean, the water companies can have it as well as they want, but Ofwat get it directly and then they will produce the reports. But anyway, because then we go into the third thing they're doing. So they're creating a new commission. Now, I did ask people to say why they would want nationalisation. Let's see what we've got. No one benefits from bonuses. Well, no, you can nationalise it and still have bonuses. If you want to, the thing is, if you want an organisation to run well, you do need the best people to run it. And they tend to come with a price tag. And the thing is, bonuses are actually useful because it basically says, look, you'll get your salary for doing your basic job, but if you do it particularly well and these are your priorities, then you get extra money. So but the bonus structure is actually a good one. That is not, the problem is surely profit, and for my mind, profit. Human rights should not be privatized. Well, you need a more specific, because that's then ideological, isn't it? Strategic assets should be under government control, not necessarily utilities. I would suggest water is a very key strategic resource, though, to be fair. Privatized monopoly is bad for consumers, so you may mean in terms of extra price. I'm not getting a lot of answers here. I'll tell you what. Utilities fluctuate in price. When there are profits, they go into public revenue, so privatized. Why would a boss of a water company who doesn't live in the area care if sewage is dumped not on their doorstep? Well, this is the thing. That's why you make them care by saying, well, if you're really bad, we'll put you in prison. But even if you're not really bad, we can still like take away half your income, basically. Because you tend to have a certain salary and then you tend to find as much or more. Sometimes, you know, most of the income of a water executive is from bonuses. So it's like you're like massively cutting down their income. So for me, I mean, lots of people have different reasons. For me, my main objections to privatization are one, that even if it's run well, you've got profit on top. Now, that profit has to be paid for with customer bills. And some customers, like people who are hard up, it's like you're basically asking them when they're already struggling to pay extra for water so that some people who live in Dubai can have a bit of extra money for doing nothing. Remember, investors don't actually do anything. The skill of okay, you need to give your money to someone who'll manage it, and they need a certain skill in knowing what's a good bet. So there's a bit of that, but there's no labor. So you're asking someone, I don't mind, you're asking someone who's poor to pay extra for someone who's rich and not doing anything for it. Ivan Eyebrows, £20 super chat. Thank you. He says, my heart says nationalisation, but my head says no. Go in line with the system in Wales. Nationalisation by all means an ideal world, but we're not in an ideal world. Too much risk for Labour and the public. Well, that is the thing I was going to come on to. So there is the system they have in Wales. So Wales and Scotland don't have privatised water as such, but they both have a different system. Scotland is nationalised, but I did get some comments on my own channel saying, oh, we don't have problems in Scotland. It's like, no, you do. There is illegal dumping in Scotland as well. It's not as bad as here, but it's still happening. So, but that is on the Scottish government because they manage it. So that's their fault. That is them authorising the illegal dumping of sewage, which they should not be doing. But it does show you that even nationalised, the thing can still fail, right? In Wales, they have a slightly different system where it is technically privatised. It's not the government that directly controls it. It's a company, but it's a not-for-profit company. So first of all, my main objection, getting people who are hard up to pay extra for someone else's profits doesn't happen because there are no profits. But the other benefit of it is there's still bonuses for the executive. They still have a bonus package, but those bonuses can't be linked to profits because there aren't any profits. It can be linked to obviously financial viability, keeping to budget and stuff like that, sure. But it can't be to maximize profits. So therefore, the bonus structure has to more closely focus the executive's attention on quality of service, right? And that is one of the proposals for the English water companies. Now, it's only a proposal. It's this commission that the government have launched. What it's going to do is it's going to report back to the Secretary of State, Steve Reed, next year. I don't know when, but next year, with recommendations. And then the recommendations that are adopted by the government, which doesn't have to be all of them, we know how that works, will be put in place at the next spending review, which is about 2029. So, whatever changes are coming it'll be coming at the end of this parliament into the next parliament, right? But they're looking at what they should do now. And one of the things that are reported to be looking at is just make them, just hand them over to not-for-profit organisations. So there'll be no profit. They'll not be run directly by the government, but they won't be able to make a profit, which also means they won't be able to have their bonus system designed on profits, which actually, given that nationalising it is complicated and we cannot afford to take on their debts, I think I would be satisfied with that if they did that. Now, I'm not saying they will do that. Just because it's being considered doesn't mean to say, because I don't know who's deciding. If the people deciding are sort of pro-privatisation. They probably won't be. It'll just be under consideration. Alistair Cairn there, £5 saying, Phil, did they find the company? I remember that on a spiel about 2 years ago in Scotland. Yes. But nonetheless, it's still happening is my point. So what my point is, if you nationalise something, you get rid of the profit, right? But you get rid of that with a not-for-profit organisation as well. You tell the bosses to prioritise the quality of service over profit. At the same time, government still need you to come in under budget because they still have to keep an eye on the pennies. But it can still be run badly. You've still got to get the right people in. And the ministers have to keep a careful eye on it as well. And they have to be competent. So it could be argued that there are advantages. I mean, I would still generally prefer nationalisation because, as someone else said, as I would say as well, the government are blamed anyway for the state of all public services, nationalised or not. This is why I can't understand the Tories. I don't understand Conservatives. Why would they be in favour of privatisation? Because they're still held responsible. Like with water companies, the Conservatives kept trying to say, well, I know it's very naughty of these water companies. I mean, for goodness sake, we keep telling them. And it's like they don't listen. And it's like, but the public will still blame them. And rightly so. The public will still blame the government they should blame the government for the state because it's the government's choice as to how those services are run. Captain Bart Roberts, £5 there, saying nationalisation without compensation. There's my teenage self coming out again. Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? The problem is you can't just steal. So it's how easy it is to take those without dealing with the debts. It does actually. I did see a report talking about the Welsh system, where because they had a similar thing. It was privatised, and they sort of made it a not-for-profit, and they did actually bring the debt down. Which I suppose is easier to do if you're not having to make profit, because all the money that would have gone into profits all of a sudden goes into paying off the debts. So that's the thing. I think realistically the debts are going to have to be paid off. I'm not sure. I'm not really seeing anyone credibly talking about how we can force some other bugger to take those debts away so that the public don't have to deal with them. So if you take the view that the public are going to have to deal with the debts, then, as I say, there's to my mind, there's two ways to do it. The first of all, the government just take those debts on, in which case the Tory media will calculate how much it would cost to cover that in terms of taxes and say, right, Labour are going to put up your taxes by this amount. Okay. The second way is, this is quite appealing because it just means it carries on running as normal without the dumping, because it doesn't matter whether it's privatised or not for profit or whatever. These regulations are going to prevent the dumping anyway. Not without costs anyway. And executives don't want to go to prison. Let's be honest. So the illegal dumping is going to come to an end, as far as I can tell. But the benefit is it runs as if it was a private company, but the money that would ordinarily be profits just pays off the debt, and then eventually you have no debt, like it was. At which point the bills can be kept low. Like when inflation goes up, the bills don't have to go up. So I'm quite happy with that as a halfway, because of course it then gives you the option later on of nationalising it, doesn't it? Once it's debt free, the only barrier to nationalisation is the time it takes in Parliament to pass the legislation to do it. You've then got the option of doing it. So I'm quite happy about this if they do it. That's an if. I don't know whether they're likely to. Anyway, go through a few comments there. Limit share profits to 2% annually on profits made, taking into account none of the money raised by raising money through borrowing. The problem is when you restrict things like that, you turn away investors, and you may think, well, good, because that's what we want. It could be illegal because it's basically you. It's sort of basically you forcing nationalisation without doing it legally. Because investors just won't invest if they're not going to. Investors are literally just people with a sack of money who go, right, I want to turn this money into a bigger sack of money, and they don't look at a thing and go, okay, that will make me a profit, I'll put it into that. They think, which will make me the most profit. So if you make it unappealing for investors, it won't get investment. and therefore you force it to collapse. And I think, and I know you'll be saying, well, that's a good outcome. It's like, yeah, but it may not be illegal. It may not be legal. Rick Parkin, £5 saying, I'm old enough to remember when the word bonus was always preceded by performance related. Well, that only applies to the plebs. Although in reality, water company bonuses are performance linked, but the performance is for profit, maximizing profits, not quality of service. Whereas performance related pay in, say, teaching, we did sort of have it semi-introduced in the teaching profession, was very much linked to the quality of the service, the results, basically. But that's the thing. All bonuses are linked to some results. It depends on, so what results do you want to focus on? Like the last Labour government, for example, one of the ways it got NHS waiting lists down is it basically presented certain guidelines that, and Labour got into trouble, remember, at one point, because one of the things they wanted was for everyone who wanted a GP appointment to be guaranteed one within 48 hours. And if people may remember, Tony Blair got into shit over that because there were some people who needed to make GP appointments in advance, but for like the next week. And they were being told by their GP, no, you've got to have it in the next 48 hours. Well, I don't bloody want it in the next 48 hours. And that was an unintended consequence. The intention was that people should have to wait no more than 48 hours. The intention was not that they had to have it in 48 hours. So, but, that gives you an idea of what happens. You set certain, the government sets the guidelines by which you are judged. And then, managers will adapt the way their organization runs to meet those targets. So just if you set the right targets, as long as you've got competent managers, and some managers are competent, then you'll get the outcomes you want. You just have to set the smart targets, don't you? Not smart as in SMART, although they're good as well, but smart as in intelligence. One way or the other, the public are going to have to fork out even more money in the medium term to get this back into fit for purpose state. They are, and the reason for that is because there's no one to charge for it. Because investors are like, the government can't say to investors, right, cough up a load of money, because they obtained it legally. You can't just take it off them. That's theft. Also, you'd struggle anyway, because between I think it's about 70 to 90% of all ownership of English water companies is outside the country. Good luck trying to chase someone up in Dubai, saying, give us extra money because you've been swindling us for years. Because they'll just turn around and say, piss off. I'm going to drive in my Ferrari now. So there we go. Phil really needs to replace at least one of the talking heads at the Beeb. No, I don't like London. I go every now and then when I have to. I don't want to go there regularly. And I don't think they really believe in remote working either. Unlike Jacob Rees-Mogg, who says he disagrees with remote working, and yet, we all remember a few weeks ago, he was on GB News, his employer, so doing work, but he was, at home on his webcam. So, Colin there saying, I have to say, one of the joys of this trip is knowing that the world doesn't revolve around the UK. What's depressing is you can't escape the US presidential election. No. There are, there are certain countries where what they do is spectacularly important for the entire world. The United States is top of the heap there. Distressingly, Russia is also on the list, and it really shouldn't be. It's got a smaller economy than us, much smaller. It's absolutely ridiculous that we allow them to take the piss. There's absolutely no need for it. But there we go. You can go to Salford. It's lovely. Why would I go to Salford? I don't like travelling anywhere. Like, my hair needs cutting. Partly I was delaying on that because I was a little bit ill for a bit. But now I'm just in the position where I'm just being a bit lazy. I need to book it for tomorrow maybe, because I'm not going to have electricity for certain parts anyway. Because I just don't like going out of the house. It's an effort for me to get out. We end up paying out because we repay the money the private firm source. Well, I mean, what we're going to end up, I mean, at the moment, there is still profit. We are still paying for profit. If this system comes in, at least we will stop paying for profit. We are also having to pay for the infra because we need the infrastructure. We should have had it a long time ago. We still need it. Um, and this is as much on the last Labour government as not, because that infrastructure was not. I mean, the last Labour government should at the very least have done what the current one is doing, is saying, build the bloody infrastructure and do not use the money that you say you need for it for profits and bonuses. The last Labour government could have done that. They could, and I know when they came in, privatisation was still relatively new, but it should. I mean, nothing was being done. Nothing was being done to upgrade the systems. So how did they manage to be in power for 13 years and not realise that absolutely nothing was being done to upgrade, our infrastructure? So that's on multiple governments, but at least we've got one now. Arguably, the reason Labour are doing this now is because of the excess of it all. But there it is. Southern Water built a bloody great storm drain between Brighton and New Haven. It stopped the flood in East Brighton, but now Hove and further west up underwater. All right, okay. I'll tell you what is there was where's One Angry Pagan? He likes talking about flood defences. There was, I've forgotten where it was now. Somerset. There was a little project in Somerset. I've an idea Jacob Rees-Mogg didn't like it, but that a few years ago they decided to rebuild a salt marsh, and apparently the local Tories there go, "Oh, you're absolutely ridiculous. Why are you doing this? It's stupid. It's not going to work." Well, they've done it anyway, and it's worked marvelously. It's worked absolutely spectacularly, because that's what we used to have, salt marshes. And then we decided, no, we don't that. We want to develop the land and use it for this, that, and the other. And now we wonder why we keep getting flooded, because we don't have natural flood defences, which are really easy. Because salt marshes, they absorb the water and then they give it back out to the sea. It's all brilliant. But there it is anyway. Excess, but also better public awareness. Well, the public couldn't help notice if every time they strolled into a stream, they had to go to hospital. So yeah, public awareness. That being said, the public are still not aware as I would like. I remember back in 2021, where the Tories were passing this environment bill, and the environment bill was going to allow water companies much more leeway on dumping raw sewage. And then there was this big outcry, public outcry, and they went, no. And the government went, all right, we'll put in some safeguards, all right then. Then the Owen Paterson scandal hit, and that caused a huge public outcry, which then took attention away from the Environment Act. So the Tories then put the original clauses into the Environment Act and passed it. I mean, that's why, although the Labour government are now talking about cracking down on illegal dumping, the Conservatives' environmental bill allowed for more legal dumping than should have been the case as well. So you have to be really clear here about, under exactly what circumstances it should be legal, because there will still be raw sewage dumping, even when all of this legislation's passed and everything. It will massively reduce it, but it won't stop it. The only thing that will stop it is actually developing that infrastructure, which I don't know how long that will bloody well take. But there we go. Graham saying, talking of terrible people called Graham, the transphobic writer of Father Ted called me a groomer on Twitter this week. He's going to regret doing that. Are you picking a fight with Linham there? Do you know what? I used to follow him for a bit to just observe. And I saw in real time him really go down the rabbit hole. It's quite spectacular to watch. Prunator there saying, if we all but nationalise it, won't the Tories have a harder time reversing it as a better alternative to the public? So that's potentially a good point. Yeah. So if we go back to the idea of a not-for-profit organisation, so it won't be nationalised. So yeah, if the Tories sell it, it'll be like, if it's working and the debt's down and it's working well, then yeah, you're right. What will be the justification for the public? Could be a tricky one. They'll still want to do it anyway, but yes, you could be right there. I suppose what they would want to do is to say they'll use the same lies that Thatcher did. Oh, but if we privatise it, we can get in more investment to make it even better. But yeah, you're right. It probably would be harder because the Tories have a much easier time selling something that's nationalised, because what they will do for a bit is if it's working well, they'll make sure, because they'll be the ones running it. So they'll make sure it doesn't work well. So that in 5 years' time, they go, well, this is a load of bollocks. It's not working. We better privatise it. So yeah, that's a good point. Maybe that's another advantage I hadn't considered. But there we go. It's we'll call it there. I'll just remind you that the show tomorrow will be at 9 a.m., not 9:30. If you're watching live, you won't. If you're watching not live, you won't care. Yeah, thanks very much for coming on, everyone. Don't forget to click the like button and to subscribe to the channel. Have a great rest of day, and until next time, I'll see you later.